So a good friend of mine said I should tell my UFO story on my YouTube channel. He said, you tell all kinds of other stuff about your life. Why not tell this? You've been telling this story for over 40 years. And it's all true. And so I'm going to tell it tonight. I've been telling people, friends, family, since I was 19 years old when it first happened. I used to live outside of Pine Bush, New York. And if you look that up, that area of the Hudson Valley, especially during the 1980s, had all kinds of crazy sightings of UFOs, especially a lot of those triangular light crafts, things like that. And I saw those. A lot of people I know saw that. This isn't a story about seeing lights. I saw all kinds of lights. And that could have been anything, right? Now, this happened in broad daylight outside of Pine Bush, New York, near an area called Thompson Ridge. And I lived in a small cabin. There was like 5 or 6 of these cabins owned by 2 guys. It was like a campground, but they let us live there full time. So I was poor. I was 19, so I lived there. The nearest house was, man, more than 5 miles away, maybe as close to 10 miles away. We're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the road getting in there was like a logging type road. It took a long time to get in there. You couldn't just run to a neighbor. So it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, this was over 40 years ago, and I see it still fresh in my mind. I hear a banging on my door. It's one of the landlord guys. He's like, get out here, get out here. I run out there. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And so there's 6 people standing around, different people that lived there, the 2 landlords and 4 other people, different ages. They lived in the cabins, and they just point up. And I look up, and I didn't even realize, because it was daylight, it was very dark. And I look up, and I couldn't see the sky. And thought, like, didn't register at first. You know, is there a storm? Am I seeing an eclipse? What the hell's going on? And I realized what the hell it is. And everybody's talking, and they're like, holy shit, it's some kind of craft or something. It, definitely a craft. I don't know what kind. Because it was so big. Once my eyes got adjusted, I realized what I'm seeing. It was above the treetops. I'd say about 100 feet, 75 to 100 feet in the air, just above the tallest trees. We were in a clearing where the cabins were. So probably about, I'd say that was a good 2 acres of clearing. This thing was so big that you couldn't see the edges. I don't even know if it was round, square, triangular. I have no idea, because you couldn't see the edges. It was so big that it reached over the trees. Underneath, you could still see there was daylight through the trees on the edges. But this thing just sat there. Just sat there. And we're all just staring in amazement, going, oh my God, you know? And it was eerie because you couldn't hear any wind. It seemed like the wind almost stopped. Okay, the breeze. You couldn't hear the birds chirping. You couldn't hear the animals, the things you hear every day out there. Couldn't hear any of this. This thing, I don't want to say it didn't make a sound, because it was a sound you could feel and not hear, if that makes any sense. Like a dull hum that went through my body, like a tuning fork, let's say. A vibration. Couldn't really hear it. You could feel it, though. It was like humming. There were no lights. Nothing. It was very dark because this thing was blocking out the sun. You still had light because, you know, light coming under from the edges of the woods. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it just sat there. And we watched it for over 10 minutes. I mean, literally, it just sat there long enough to study every part of what I could see. I couldn't tell you. It was so big, like I said, I couldn't see the edges. It had to be bigger than a football field, bigger than that, because we were in the middle of about like 2 acres. It completely covered that and beyond. It was that big. I wasn't scared. I was shocked. Shocked is the only word I can think of. And we studied this thing, and we saw, I mean, like could see it. It was like 75 to 100 feet away. And we were able to stare at it for at least 10 minutes. And there were no lights. And it was like almost the color of, like, if you've ever seen hematite, which is like a mineral, kind of a gunmetal-ish color, but it didn't look like metal. There were like, it didn't look like anything that had been like built. It looked like it had been molded. You know, everything was completely smooth. And I felt like we were under the center, very close to it. And everybody kept pointing. In what we think was the center was like this round hole, but it looked like a tunnel that went up inside it. And the edges were rounded and smooth. It wasn't like a hole cut in it. It was like a tunnel that kind of smoothed up inside it. Everything was polished perfectly smooth. This thing wasn't shiny. It was matte colored, but it was polished. It was like hematite in a way. I'm not saying that it was hematite, but that's the only thing I can think of that it looks similar to. And there was no lights. There was no smoke, no noise, no engine, no anything like that. And then around the outside, probably maybe 20 to 40 feet away from that tunnel in the middle were these smaller holes all the way around. And I don't know what they were. They were also, looked like they were recessed into the craft, okay? Again, no light, no smoke, no heat, no nothing. Just this faint kind of vibration that went through your body. And like I said, the animals were dead silent, and we're in the middle of the woods. It was never quiet there. The birds were always chirping. There was always noise going on. There was always a breeze in the trees. That was gone. And we were just like amazed on what was going on. Everybody knew what it was. I mean, we said, it's a freaking UFO. It's a UFO. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind. Everybody knew it. I just wish I could have seen the shape of it and everything. I'm assuming it was round. I don't know, because I couldn't see the edges of it. And we watched this for, it was over a good 10 minutes. It was a long time. Seemed like forever. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like we're going to get taken away or something, which did not happen. But then when it took off, that was the weirdest thing, because it didn't take off like a jet. It didn't take off like, Star Trek or, warp speed or anything like that. It just, and the only way I can describe it is it folded into itself. Like, it didn't like turn into liquid or anything, but it almost seemed like mercury. If you've ever seen mercury floating around, like it was a split second. It just, I swear the only way I can describe it is it folded into itself and disappeared in the clouds. And then all we saw was the sky, and the sky was back again. I mean, no sound, no nothing. It wasn't like or anything like that. It just, a split second, just folded into itself is the only way that I can describe it. Everybody saw the same thing, and everybody was freaked out. Two of the people said, never talk about it, never use my name, don't you ever talk about this. They're like, we don't want to be, everybody say we're crazy. But I still, to this day, see it so vividly over 40 years later. I was 19 years old. It freaked me out. And I knew from that point on, for sure, UFOs exist. What they call them today, UAPs. They exist. And there's no way, especially 1983, we didn't have anything close to that. We don't have anything like that now. I mean, this thing was so dead silent. And it wasn't hovering because there was no movement. It just sat there as if it was just sitting on an invisible landing pad in the middle of the air. It was crazy. And it was the most incredible experience of my life. It really was. And like I said, it just folded into itself and disappeared into the clouds. And that was it. And that's my UFO story.